Okay.
Would you join me in reciting the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks everybody being here this morning.
We called Blood, he may be on his way.
Thank you, Dan.
He forgot about it.
Okay. Folks, ambulance, anything to report on or any questions from the board either way?
Call volume's been picking up. Yesterday the record's 26 in a 24-hour period. I think we ended up at 23 yesterday, so we came close to the record. A busy day yesterday. Fair week is in full swing. We had provided extended medical coverage for concert night. We had 18 Horizon Health employees, EMS, ER, emergency preparedness, a physician. So well covered for the fair. We've got that tent torn down. We're going to be taking that stuff back to RACC today. But concert night went off without hitch. I think we saw 2 patients, so nothing crazy. But we want to be over prepared. We've got crews out there the rest of the week, so hopefully it remains uneventful. But we are prepared for whatever happens. Questions, comments, concerns for myself or Swin?
Leave the things down, I think I passed.
No, I thought it was Sunday.
Truck taking it going that way, but it's a big trailer.
While you're here, on 911, Josh, have you let the antenna lease? Have you, remember I talked to you about that they were still sending 911?
Yeah, I talked to him again. He said he was going to let them know, but it's a different department over there.
Well,
So-
we need to somehow make sure
Sure.
that either a letter needs to go with it or something, because they keep getting,
So apparently they charge the sheriff department late fees. They have not charged us late fees yet for that, but if they charge one, it's probably a matter of time before they do it.
they told us just to forget it.
That's what he told me to do, not to worry about it.
Okay.
So,
I just want to make sure everybody that's connected knew what everybody was doing.
Then I guess on the other piece of the 911 board, Bruce Harris and Associates, we're kind of doing an internal audit of that because we're paying them a lot of money, and we had another vendor kind of run an audit, and we're at a 22% error rate. So with the amount of money we're paying Bruce Harris, we're kind of looking at seeing, we're going to bring them in next meeting and say, hey, well, if we're paying you all this money, why is there a 22% error rate we're still dealing with?
And that is on,
That's for all the GIS services.
When you say a 22% error rate,
Yeah, so we had another company come through and we're kind of shopping around to see if anybody can give us a better price, but this other company just did a third-party audit without even knowing we are interested in switching over. Just had them look at the stuff. And for all our next-gen 911, all our GIS things report to the state. Basically, where the center line, there's a lot of center line issues where the mapping doesn't match up for the CAD. But right now, according to this data market, the other company we're looking at, but they ran an audit and there's a 22% error rate, which Bruce Harris is disputing, saying that it's no way because it wouldn't go to the state that way. But we're investigating that, and I need to talk to Dina.
what I was just
Yeah.
gonna say, because you
Yeah.
might get a better deal. Maybe it's time to look at, do you use Harris at all?
No, I'm not
I
connected.
don't mean for GIS, but I mean, do you use, I know the treasurer's office.
Yeah,
does.
other than that, yeah, we're on the same financial program, but
Right, okay.
So just in the past year, 911 board spent about $30,000 to Bruce Harris, so it's, don't feel like when we do a cost benefit analysis, I don't think we're getting our money out of it.
It's good to know, but I think you're right, you need to talk to Dina and maybe she's got some issues and doesn't know it, or maybe she knows, but maybe if you work together, it can be resolved.
Yeah. Still waiting on some grant funding that I think we've been approved for, just hasn't deposited yet, but 5-year plan we're working on. We've got a lot of upgrades that, a lot of our equipment's at end of life, and I know the move is coming, so we're starting to budget for that. So we're looking ahead and trying to stay on top of that, or in front of it anyway.
Anything else, guys? Yeah. This morning we have Josh Barrett with us. who is, we have talked to, and I think we passed out, didn't we pass out a report for them?
We did, I think, when he sent the one
Several
before.
months ago,
Yes.
and I think
proposal.
now that we're out of the ground, it would be time to take a close look at that to understand what you're talking about and our options. I understood somebody was from Interstar was gonna be here.
It looks, I guess maybe something may come up. I have not heard from her, but she said last week or the week she would be here, but I haven't seen her this morning. I have not heard from her, so.
I know some of you probably know Josh. Board, this is Josh. Josh, this is the board.
Hey, everybody. So I'll do my best to explain Interstar's net billing and how that works. So, you know, if Angie was here, she could correct me if I'm wrong. But Ameren and Interstar are a little bit different, how that works with the credits. Anyway, I'm Josh Berry, I'm a solar shift. So I'm going to go through the basics of what PV, where we are, how it works, billing, incentives, all those, and then I'll explain, we'll dive into the system specific for the jail, what my recommendations are, what options we have, and then, you know, you guys can decide what you want to do from there. So early on, and this is kind of preliminary. Solar's catching on, and solar is really new to Illinois. Everybody's like, is it sunny enough here? You know, everybody thinks Florida's the better place to be. So this is from the Department of Energy. This is April, so this would be like your equinox month roughly, where, you know, daylight's equal. So in the north, the further north you go, the days are shorter in the winter, longer in the summer. So that plays out. But if you look at what Florida energy PV radiation is versus where we are, there's really not much difference. You start to get into the southwest, like Arizona, Nevada, Phoenix, that's the better place down here. And why is that? Well, they have less rain and less clouds. So that really plays into it. But overall, Illinois is actually fairly good for solar. One thing solar likes is sun, one thing it hates is heat. So once you get into hotter climates, it gets hot, it builds up resistance internally, and you start to lose efficiency when it gets really hot. So one thing we like are ground mount systems if you can, because you get nice airflow around it. They tend to stay cooler than if they're up on a roof. They don't get as much airflow. Basics of photovoltaic, we take sunlight, makes a DC current. The electrons hit this membrane wafer in there. There's thin cell and then there's silica based. What we use around here is silica based. It excites electrons, the photons excite an electron, it jumps to a wire and creates a DC current. With that DC current goes into an inverter. An inverter takes the DC current, makes it into AC current, which is what we all want. You can see here, this is all happening behind the meter. Once we get our meter, if we're using it in the building, we're not pulling power from the utility. So by default, the meter's not seeing what is being produced if it's being used behind the meter. Now let's say it's a sunny, cool day, air conditioner's not running, we're producing more than what we're using, it'll actually go back onto the grid. So you're not storing it, technically, you're putting it back on the grid. Hits the wires, goes wherever, who cares? So for simplicity, that meter's reading what you're putting back on. If you're producing behind the meter and using it, the meter never even sees it. So there's always a little bit of confusion when people see their bill and it says solar generation, it doesn't match what we say. Well, the difference is what you use behind your meter. And with that, Ameren has something in place called net metering. So when you go into net metering, it gives you a credit for that. When you pull it back through, you use the credit. There's no financial monetary exchange there. So in essence, you get to use the grid to store your excess power and then pull that excess power back. Interstar does something called net billing. It sounds better on the surface, but it's not as good. So when we produce excess power, it hits their wires, they pay you for your extra power. And they pay you roughly 5 cents. That rate varies depending on what they're buying their electricity for. The retail rate is around 10 cents. So you're getting about 50 cents on your dollar for your electric rate. Versus Ameren, when it hits the wire, you get a credit, it pulls it back, you use the credit. There's no money exchanged, but you can literally zero your bills out down to your meter fees. So this kind of explains how this works with the behind the meter. It goes through, meter spins backwards. And then you get into like power purchase agreements, community solar, these types of things. We do something called virtual net metering, where we basically produce it, throw it on the wire automatically. We're not using anything. It gets credits to our account. We can sell those credits to someone off the system. And that's what you would see in a power purchase agreement. The other way we do power purchase agreements is if we build it behind the facility and we own it and sell power to the off-taker. And we can explain that, the pluses and minuses of that. So that's kind of how the electricity side of it works. The reason you're seeing solar explode in Illinois is, one, solar prices have come down over the last 10 years exponentially. The other thing is the state has a law in place to go to 100% clean energy. Clean is a relative term. They throw nuclear power in there. Clean energy by 2050. We don't have the technology to do that today, but the goal is to get there. So how are we going to get there? What they've done is they've gone to the utilities, Ameren, ComEd, and they make everybody pay on their bill to participate in this program. Now, Ameren, who's a big player in downstate, ComEd's a big player up in the northern part of the state, collects this money for this program. And what they do is they buy these renewable energy credits. And a renewable energy credit can come from wind, solar, biomass, hydro, all different kinds of things. If it gets an S put in front of it, that means it's specific for solar. So you'll hear the term or the acronym SREC, and that's a solar renewable energy credit. So why do we care about this? ComEd, Ameren do not produce electricity. Even though ComEd's owned by a huge energy company, technically on paper they do not produce electricity. Neither does Ameren. They buy electricity and pass it on to the off-takers and they pay for it. Or you can buy your own electricity from a producer indirectly, or you can produce it yourself. So it's a deregulated market here in Illinois. These ROCs, to get to 100% renewable energy, the utilities are buying these credits for people that produce clean energy to subsidize them. So your Ameren customers, ComEd customers are funding this program if you participate or not. So if you look at their bill, the tax is down at the bottom, that's in there. Interstar doesn't collect for this, they don't have anything to do with this program. But how the law is written, if you're in Ameren territory, you can participate. So to make it simple, you get to be a freeloader in the program if you're on Interstar. So Interstar's not all bad because of the net metering not being there. It's actually good because you guys aren't paying for the program you get to participate in. So Interstar is going to buy these. Think of a clean energy credit like a carbon credit. It's a made up entity. But you get to buy these, Ameren will buy these from you. It's a 15-year agreement. After 15 years, you can resell these. And I'll show what the values of these are. So the solar's making electrons and renewable energy credits. You guys are interested in electrons and saving money, selling the renewable energy credits. So that's your revenue streams on this. So there's different types of ownership options for solar. First and foremost, the best way to do it is buy and own the system yourself. You get to take advantage of all these benefits. You own the system at the end of the day. You don't care what electric prices do. If they go up, they go down. You're getting solar power. Solar power doesn't have an input cost like a gas generator would or a coal plant or natural gas. So your inputs are fixed. It's a capital investment. So owning the system is what I typically recommend. You can lease a system. So you get into these, hey, free solar panels. Well, yeah, they're free to install, but you pay for them the next 20 years on a lease. The problem with leases are, a lot of people that sell these, they'll put them anywhere. They don't care if they're under a tree, because your solar power is for free and they give you a free system, but you're making a lease payment, they really don't care how much power it produces. So when you see a guy with solar on his roof and it's under a big oak tree, you're like, what the heck's this guy thinking? Well, he got sold by a shady salesman for a lease deal. The other way is a power purchase agreement, or a PPA. And what that is, someone builds a system for you that sells you power off of that. It's a power purchase agreement. So the question is, why would there be different types of arrangements on this? One of them is upfront cost. It's a big investment. Not everybody has the money to do it. But with that, the owner receives rebates and incentives. Over time, you own the system. These systems are warranted for 25 to 30 years. There's no moving parts. They're very simple system. You own a property versus making payments on it like a lease would. So what happens when your lease is up? If you do a lease type arrangement on a PPA, what happens if you like for a homeowner, if you sell your house and move, how does that work when you have a contract with this third-party system? The big thing that comes into play for government entities are the tax appetite. Governments don't pay taxes. You're going to see a big chunk of these incentives are tax rebates. So historically, you go to a school district, they want to save money, they have land or roof space, they want to do something like this, but if you just buy the system, you take the energy credits and the RECs without the tax incentives, it might take 20 years to pay off. Versus someone like me that pays taxes, I say, I'll build the system for you, I'll sell you power at a discounted price from day one, and you're saving money from day one and you're not putting in capital out there. So there's pluses and minuses to both. The other thing to consider is O&M of the system. Solar tends to have very low O&M costs. Mowing around it, most mechanical issues you have are covered under warranty. There's no moving parts. I'm a big fan of fixed tilt. I don't like the tracker systems. You're taking something that's simple and making it complicated. Upfront cost versus no upfront cost. Long-term benefits to the user, aka how much money you're going to save over time versus buying power over time. And the third-party ownership would be the PPA or the lease type. So the PPA has its benefits of you're basically buying power at a discounted rate. So that becomes a little bit sensitive to what our electric price is doing. Because if I'm paying, for example, 9 cents for a PPA and Interstar is at 10, that's great. I'm saving 10%. If those prices keep inching up and I have a fixed rate or a rate with a low inflation escalator on it, everything works well. Well, what happens if the price comes down? You're locked into a fixed PPA rate. So there is a risk with a PPA still from the off-taker that if prices do come down, you could end up paying more than what the grid price is. And that's if you do a fixed rate PPA with an escalator. There are options to do a guaranteed savings rate where I'm going to guarantee 10%. Well, that works good for the guy that owns it. If prices keep going up, his rates are going to continue to go up. If prices go down, his price is going to go down, but it takes the risk off the off-taker. So why am I explaining all this? So the county has no tax appetite, right, as far as I know. However, there's a tax credit called the ITC. It's worth 30% of what the system cost is. So you get 30 cents on the dollar worth of tax credit, not a tax write-off. The IRS is promoting, well, the government's promoting renewable energy. And this is a problem for a lot of government entities and schools that couldn't participate in this if they wanted to own it. It just doesn't pencil out for them. So they've made it to where you can sell that tax credit. So you can go to a bank, insurance company, an entity that pays a lot in taxes, they don't have a lot of tax write-off, and you can sell that. There's actually an entire market for selling these ITCs. Now the 30%, if I'm going to sell that to an off-taker, is going to have a discounted rate on it because they're going to want to make money on the deal. So I show a 30% discount or 30% ITC rate in these financials, and I can help navigate that because I'm going to propose that you own the system. I think it's a better deal. You're going to want to discount that. There is some paperwork that has to happen on the front end, basically notifying the IRS that we're building this system. There's going to be tax credits that are going to be transferred to a third party. And then we can get into, if you own it, we can provide O&M services. Typically that's very little. And then when you get into ground cover, you can do native plants. Some people love native plants. Some people hate native plants. A lot of people think they look like weeds. So, or you can mow it. So there's those considerations as well. What I'm proposing is not a very big system. So it wouldn't be much different than mowing your garden. You're not mowing a huge solar facility that's like sitting over here in Kansas. Understanding net billing and sizing considerations. That's something we want to go through. If we're producing power and sending it back to Interstar, we want to minimize what we give to Interstar at 5 cents. Because when it comes back through that meter, we're buying it at 10 cents. So we are offsetting the cost some, about 50%. but you know, you're going to get more bang out of your buck for the system if it's behind the meter and the electricity is staying behind the meter. The other variable we have on a new building is we don't know exactly how much power this facility is going to use. So the last thing we want to do is go put in a system that's way too big. We're producing a lot of power we're not using. We can sell it for the 5 cent, but that's going to start to change your payback times on this. So the other thing is, if we go over a 25 kW on Interstar, they're going to go to a straight wholesale price at 5 cents. So my recommendation is to keep the system size at 25 kW on the inverter. We can oversize the DC because that inverter, that panel is going to produce its max on a nice, beautiful sunny day at noon. A lot of the day, your sun's in the other parts of the sky, you know, not overhead. You have winter solstice, summer solstice, you know, sun up to sundown. So we oversize the system. We can oversize to push up these as the sun comes up, it pushes the inverter to the max, and it does something called clipping. So we can maximize the system output by oversizing the DC. So my recommendation would be go to a 25 kW and oversize the system. Once the building's up and running for a year or two, we can look at and say, hey, we're not producing even close to what we want. Then we can look at an expansion and run the economics on that. It might make sense, it might not. But that 25 kW is kind of a sweet spot for being on the Interstar system. And then there are ways, you know, talking to Joshua about there's a 911 tower that might go in that's going to be using power. You know, we might want to consider, is it worth putting another meter here and tying a whole nother system to power this separate, and then you get another 25 kW on this meter and running 2 meters? Maybe. The disadvantage is you're going to be paying 2 meter fees. So we'd have to look at how that works as far as, you know, the economics of that. So, so ability expanded future take. Okay, the system itself, the modules come with a 25 to 30 year power production warranty. What does that mean? It means that when it's new, it's rated for, I'm going to make up a number, 500 watts. As time goes, these panels are going to degrade over time. Well, how much are they going to degrade? So over 30 years, the modules that we use decrease about 0.5% per year. So in 30 years, it's still going to produce 85% of what it did when it was new. So as it ages, it does get a little, you know, little less efficient, but it's still going to produce 85% in year 30. Now, what happens at year 30? You don't have a warranty. That doesn't mean the panel's going to stop to produce. The other thing we're doing with panels these days, the biggest technology change we're seeing is bifacial modules. So the front side that's normal to the sun absorbs light. That's what the panel's rated for. On the back side, we're putting glass instead of membranes on them. It does a few things. One, it's encapsulating the components in glass, which if you've ever been out in the woods, you'll find a 60-year-old beer bottle that still is in perfect shape. Glass is very good at protecting from the elements. The other thing it does is it allows diffuse light to absorb on the back side. We don't take that to an account when we model these systems, so it's just a bonus. It can pick up to 10% on average is what we say. If it's a snowy day, my system up in Malfunction Junction, I have 2 systems. The older panels have the membrane, the newer panels have the bifacials. When it's sunny and it's snowed, the front ones won't even turn on. The back ones will come on and produce 20 to 30% with snow covered on them. So I can't guarantee that, but that's what my system does. What also happens is the back side of this starts to heat up because it's absorbing light with these black modules, because the front looks the same as the back. The snow melts off significantly faster. So in our weather, these bifacial technology really have a lot of benefits. That works if it's on the ground. That doesn't work if it's up on a roof. The racking system that we use has a 25-year warranty. Inverters typically have a 10 to 12-year warranty, which isn't a terrible thing because we always say budget to replace the inverters at year 15. Typically the inverters are not a big expense in the overall system cost. And the reason we say that is if they do fail at that range, there's no guarantees they are though. If it does fail, you have money allocated to replace those. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. The biggest technology changes we're seeing are the inverters and storage side of things, energy storage. So newer technology is going to be out there in 15 years. It might not be a bad idea to plan for that. And then long-term electric generation. So if you're producing electricity yourself, what the market price is starts to become irrelevant. Savings to the taxpayer comes into play, but once you buy this system, you're basically fixing your long-term operational costs. So there are a lot of benefits on that, and I'll show you what those numbers are projected to be. The other thing is net metering regulations for co-ops. Co-ops are not regulated by the ICC currently. The ICC is regulating these monopolies, the Amerants, the ComEds. Co-ops are owned by the members. So what happens is the co-ops get to make their own rules. So as solar started to become popular, all of a sudden, and all these co-ops, there's size limitations. There are net metering's gone, we're doing net billing. There's really no oversight outside of the board that runs the co-op. Springfield's looking into that because they're really pushing to go to 100% renewable, and the co-ops are becoming an obstacle for them. So there is discussions in Springfield that some of these net metering rules may change. Can't guarantee that, it may not happen, but there is the potential net metering may show up here at Interstar at some point. And then I'll go through the proposal that I put together for this. Let's see here. So I show a PPA rate on here. I'm not proposing a PPA. The cash purchase over here on the right are more of the numbers we're interested in. So, if you look at electric bill savings over 30 years, it's $240,000. And that's with a 3% escalation rate on it. 5 years ago, people would argue 3% escalation rate's high. Right? Well, in the whole of things, that was true. But when you start to look at energy, electric cars are coming. Buildings are going to heat pumps and all electric. The demand for electricity is growing. Meanwhile, coal plants are being retired. Gas plants are being retired. So the supply side is coming down. It's projected electric rates are going to go up significantly. So a 3% escalation rate is a very low conservative rate. So if now fast forward, electric rates from 5 years ago on the supply side have almost doubled from what they were. So my 3% now looks very conservative. So we look at it over a trend of 30 years of a 3% is a conservative, honest number to plug in. Upfront payment, the system I have designed, we're penciling in about $120,000 for the system. And then I'll go through the total incentives, net payments, and how that breakdown works. But with the current rates and the system I'm showing here, you're about a 7.7 year payback on this. Here's the site plan for the new jail facility. I worked with Joshua and the architect on this, and we're thinking down here somewhere is where we want to put it. I believe they're subbing in some conduits and some things just for the option when we go tie in the building, we're not boring under your building and causing damage. So there has been some planning for this. If they don't use it, what's the cost of a few conduits? Not much. It's easy to put in. But the idea is to put it down here and tie in, I believe, the electric panels up in here somewhere, transformers here. So you see my little thing where it goes on aerial imagery, there's nothing there. So it's just literally panels sitting out in the middle of the field. I don't know exactly what this building's going to use. So, that's why I'm saying err on the small side. You can always add later. You don't want to err on the big side and you just have too big of a system. So the breakdown on these costs are your PV system cost is about $120,000. You have this Illinois ABP incentive. That's the adjustable block program, which is the SREX that I was explaining. So you sell these to Ameren. Ameren buys them. Ameren doesn't want to deal with every Johnny homeowner out there. So they have minimum submittal sizes that can go into the program. So there are brokers that deal with the Johnny homeowners, get packages contracted, and then sells those to Ameren. So it simplifies the process for Ameren, but it also simplifies it for the person that owns the system, because the broker is going to do the paperwork, the reporting, all these things. And how this contract works is a 15-year agreement. They're gonna pay you $49,000 for these credits for 15 years. So your system's gonna produce this much with our energy models, we look at that, and then they're gonna contract with you. There is a broker fee for him to do his work. So on this system, it's around $6,000. That's paid up on the front end. Now, the next question always gets, what happens if that guy disappears? He could, for sure. But there's a lot of clawbacks and things in place with the state and these brokers so they don't disappear. When the state deregulated in the 90s, you know, all these people come knocking on your door. I can save you all kinds of money on your electric bills. The next thing you know, these people are paying 5 times the amount they were before, and they're stuck in these long contracts. So the state learned a lesson on that with the solar program. There's a lot of oversight that happens with the players in this. The other thing we're showing up here is the federal tax credit for $36,000. That's the 30% ITC that's transferable. So consideration on that is, do we have a local entity that wants to participate in that, or do we sell them on the open market? Just note that there will be a discount applied to that if we sell them on the open market. So if you look here, I'm undersizing the system some. So on this pie chart, my pie in the sky numbers that I'm modeling here, I'm showing that you're still going to be purchasing power from the utility. And this is what is going to be produced by the solar system. And this is a breakdown month by month. So this is by the year, this is month by month. So what you can see is a lot of times in the winter time, your system's running, your building's going to be running on natural gas or propane. So you're not running huge cooling loads like you do in the summer. So your usage will go up and go down in the winter. If you're on electric heat, these look exactly the opposite. You have huge usage in the winter time and it dips down. However, the solar, the days are shorter in the winter, longer in the summer, so this green line is what the solar's producing. So you can see how that kind of matches up fairly well. And I made this show where it's matching close, and this is where it has a big differential. So here's what we're producing, here's what we're buying. Do we have a question?
Yeah, I got a favor.
Yep.
Would you please email me your presentation
Absolutely.
so that I can distribute it to the board?
Absolutely. I have PDFs of all this, I'll give you all.
Perfect.
Yep.
Are these months across here?
Yep, so this is January to December. There you go.
Here's
It's on your
my
system.
unit.
Yep. So you can see matches.
No, that's fine. Go
Yep.
ahead.
Yep. And then, so here's your breakdown. So the hurdle, hence the free solar panels, the hurdle is people have to come up with the upfront cost. These rebates come back. And then you have your net solar system cost out of pocket at the end of the day.
What's the timing on those coming back?
I will go through that.
Sorry.
Yep. So this is a breakdown of what numbers I'm showing, the broker fee, the 30% tax credit, and the adjustable block program. So one thing I will say about the adjustable block program, the tax credits are there. You can sell those. The adjustable block program collects money. There's a certain budget for this. Historically, the community solar market was a disaster when it rolled out because they didn't think community solar was going to be popular in Illinois. It was the exact opposite. Cypress Creek rolls in town, sending out letters to every landowner in the country and locked down lots of land, submitted huge amounts of applications to the state. There was no funding for it. They only could do a handful of the projects that were permitted and submitted. The DG, which is behind the meter projects, the funding has been very stable. The last year or so, solar is really starting to gain traction. People are becoming more comfortable with it. They see the benefits of it. So the programs have so much money allocated per year. And Illinois, like anything, is complicated. The year goes from June to June. It's not January to January. It's June to June. So what happens is once those funds are sold out, you go on a wait list for next year. So the timing on this funding can change depending on when you get it in. The sooner you get it in, the better. And each year, the value of those SRECs comes down a little bit. And that's why they call it the adjustable block program. So over time, they're gonna take these incentives and make them less to where solar can stand on its own 2 feet. Or there's so much of it that in electric rates are gonna get so high, you're just gonna be forced to buy solar like in California, unfortunately. So the breakdown on these credits, Carbon Solutions is really the broker in the state that handles these transactions for selling these credits. This is generated right off their portal, and it's a breakdown of how the financials work on this. So project name, pricing we're plugging in, the RECs are 63.53 per megawatt hour. System size 25 kW, AC 37.4 DC. It's a ground mount. What we're looking for degradation, contract of 15 years, how many we're going to produce, blah blah blah. So the utility holds some collateral on this on top of that cash flow. So you will get the money back, but they hold it for 15 years because they say, well, we're paying you up front for these credits. You owe us 15 years of credits. So the utility and the broker hold 2.5% and 5%. That's by law. You will get your money back. But this gets held on the front end when you contract with them. The approved vendor fee, the broker's fee is 12.5%, so that's where the $6,000 comes from. This you will never get back. That's the cost of doing business with them. These come back and get returned. There's a $500 application fee to submit it to the state. That's for the state to process the paperwork. The contract value, and then after energization, payments. So if you keep it at 25 kW, you get a one-time payment. If you go over 25 kW, the payments are made over 7 years. So you see why that 25 is kind of a sweet spot where you want to hit, even if it's too small. So you get a one-time payment instead of getting paid out over 7 years. So here's what the system payout cost is at the end of the day. So that's why when you go up here, you'll see the broker fee here, but this is the net cost. Cash flow, there's a utility collateral withheld, so you're not going to see that on that number because you do get it. It's just, it comes later. Yes.
Say you put in a system at the jail, and you find out the system is not big enough to handle the jail. Do you come in and add to that system, or vice versa?
Yep.
If it's too much and you take something out?
You would never take it out, just because,
Okay.
yeah.
How does that work if you put the 25 because
Yep.
you keep below that threshold? Now you come in and put some more,
They're going to resize you based on the bigger system.
so that you do pay, okay,
Yeah.
you don't get,
The cash flow
you
changes.
don't get 225.
Now there's
Okay.
there's time frames on that. If you wait 5 years, 4 years, I'll have to look up. Things are always changing a little bit. As this program matures, they make adjustments in it. They don't look at it as an expansion anymore. So if you wait, and we can find out what that magic day is, you can add on to it, and they're not going to come back and do a clawback on your collateral or your SREC that was paid in a lump sum and say, oh no, we want it back, we'll spread it out over 7 years.
Okay.
And that happened to me up at my shop. I put the original system in, it's been there for a while, we added on to it, it was past the time frame, so they look at it, it's just a new system, it's not changing the economics at all. Okay. So this part is the most confusing. I mean, Illinois has a great program, but it's Illinois. Everything's screwed up and complicated, right? So this is the most complicated. And like I said, I'll pass this out. Everybody will have copies of this. So one thing to note, though, if you look at the actual contract value, the $48,437 versus what I show here, I'm going to point this out and why it's different versus this. My software calculates this. Using my energy model inputted, it's calculating it very detailed, granular. Go put it into their system is calculating it. There's a small discrepancy there. It's a double check. These numbers match my numbers for the most part. But what the real contract value is going to be is what it's calculated when we put it in on their system. But they're going to look at my energy models and they're going to vet, hey, we're paying out for $48,500 and it's producing this much. What's Josh's energy models show? And they do have people that verify all this. So it's not like we're saying this and it's not going to happen. So this is something that changed recently. You know, from a few years ago, the ITC. What that is, that's the tax credit. So it's a dollar for dollar credit, not a write-off or depreciation. Explains this, the different types. There's the ITC and then there's a production tax credit. I would stay away from the production tax credit. The ITC is what you're wanting to look at. And then the new thing is you can transfer these credits. Historically, you couldn't do that. So we got fancy with ownership structures, PPAs, leases. Leases was actually disqualified you on it, so you had to do a PPA if it's a non-tax paying entity. It's typical tax code that's very complicated, but the good thing is they've made it to where basically if you put a system in, you can sell these credits off as a government entity. So here's what the electric, and this is a made-up electric bill, right? We don't know what this system's doing, but this is based on what Interstar rates are and just plugging in, you know, hypothetical energy usage. So you're going to be a commercial entity, and I'm assuming this is a three-phase over here at this building.
Correct.
You're going to be $165 meter fee all day. And I would never count on that meter fee coming down. If anything, that meter fee, that's the cost of being connected to their system. Then we have energy charges. And then what, you know, your total charges are here. So this is what it would look like without solar with my made up energy sizes here. Here's what Interstar's rates are, the $165 per month. And you're getting about 10%, your 10 cents is what they're charging per kilowatt hour on a commercial customer. So residential pays a little more than that. So they're absorbing some of that up on that bigger meter fee and the 10 cents. If you put it back on the grid, right now it's about 5 cents. So it's about 50 cents on the dollar if you sell it back. So your new electric bill, and remember this system's somewhat undersized, you're going to pay your meter fees, energy costs, and then total. So you can reduce your energy with this small system. I believe it's about $3,000 a year. I'm going to skip the PPA because I don't recommend a PPA. So on the cash purchases, this is where your cash flows work. Upfront cost, the broker fee, and remember they're going to charge that collateral paid up front too. They used to withhold it from the payment, but believe it or not, all solar guys aren't created equal. There's a lot of bad players out there. So they didn't withhold the collateral. So what happened was solar guys would be like, hey, I'm talking to Johnny and I think he's going to sign up. I'm going to go ahead and get him a contract and locked in before the pricing disappears. And then if Johnny didn't move forward, oh well, it's walked away. So the state goes, okay, now you want a contract and lock these prices in, you're going to pay your collateral right now, not withhold it from the payment. So cash flow wise, that does come on the front. The Illinois Adjustable Block Program incentive, electric bill savings over time. And as you can see, they're going to go up. So $240,000 over 30 years is what we're projecting for savings. If it goes, rates go up higher, you'll save more money. Your federal tax credit, that's the ITC. So here's your cash flows, annual, cumulative, 7.5 years roughly. And then you're back on the positive. So you're going to save, after you buy the system, out the door, roughly $200,000. So depending on what you want to do, you know, next steps, what I would recommend is a letter of intent. That would put us under an agreement. We need to do some due diligence. I saw a big rig over there drilling holes. That usually means you got bad soils. So we need to do some test piles over there. So we come down, we actually drive, pile on the ground, and we run engineering tests on it to make sure that it can withstand what criteria we need.
There is some testing through the whole.
Is there soil borings?
Yeah.
Soil borings are awesome. Old school of Josh the Bridge Builder. We like to put pile on the ground and see what they do. So the soil boring is going to really tell us, do we have rock issues down there, you know, groundwater issues, what types of soils we have. But the push-pull tests when they go in. We use an American-made racking system. It's made in Albuquerque, New Mexico. It's a really, really quality system. The galvanized, everything they use is top quality. It's a C-channel pile that we drive. Old school is drilling holes and pouring concrete. The new way is to drive them in. And what happens is with that C-channel is as we drive that in with our machine, it kind of starts to blow out the bottom of it and open it because it's resistant as we're beating it in. And then as it relaxes back in place, think of a fish hook. It kind of bells, it helps hold that pile in. And you'd be amazed if I drive that pile in and you come back in a month, 2 months and try to pull that pile out. You need a very, very large machine to get those pile out. So it's a really good way to do it. When you come to the end of life decommissioning, when the system needs to be removed, typically the panels can be recycled. There's a whole industry going to recycling these, pulling the metals, pulling the components out, reprocessing them. So cradle to grave. But the racking system itself is a commodity. It's steel, it's aluminum. So generally, you'll pull the panels off, you'll scrap the electric wire, you'll come in with the backhoe, rip out all the posts, scrap it, and then you're back to native ground basically. There's not concrete footings that are going to be buried under there, those types of things. The wire in the ground can stay in place or it can be pulled out. A lot of times the wire, cut the end, take off and pull, it pulls a long way. Interconnection agreement with Interstar, they're going to charge a fee to do a study on this. We need to talk to Angie at what that fee cost is going to be to do an interconnection.
It's 3,000.
It's $3,000. That's what they typically tell us. Depending on where the connection is, sometimes they don't charge that. So we would want to verify that. That $3,000 cost for interconnection is not in these numbers. So we would want to verify with Angie they're going to actually charge that cost. Honestly, Interstar is pretty good to work with. I don't personally like their net billing procedures, but
There's a $3,000 fee we have to do for a study and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Which I thought included the interconnection agreement, but maybe not.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, so that's something we do separately, permitting with Interstar. We're gonna have to get a City of Paris building permit, I'm assuming here. You get out in the county, you know, these small systems don't require a City of Paris permit. And then apply for SREX. So I would say if this is something you wanna move forward with, we need to do the test pile. We need to get on board with Interstar. I'm assuming Paris isn't gonna be an issue on this project. And get those things in place and contract the SREC sooner than later. If you want to wait, that's fine. The longer you wait, the values go down, the program could sell out. So that's just something to know and consider. That's all I have. So I did it in under an hour.
Question.
Yes.
What's the cost of the system?
Well,
He just
there's a
went
lot
through
of
the-
different pieces of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're gonna get a copy, and you can look at
Okay.
it.
Upfront cost is about $120,000. At the end of the day, when you get your credits and everything back, it's what did I say, around 40, a little over 40,000.
And did I miss it? When do you actually start to get those credits back?
For the SRECs,
Yes.
so I'm going to tell you, it's going to be a year. As long as you get it contracted and you're not on the wait list. If you're on the wait list, it can be longer.
Okay.
But-
Because like on ours, they were the first full quarter, at the end of the first full quarter, we
Okay.
got it back.
Yeah.
So it's different now.
Well, I tell you a year so you don't call yelling at me.
Oh,
Because sometimes we see them come back in 3 months, 6 months.
yeah,
And if they do, you're going to like me. If I tell you 3 to 6 months and it's a year, hey, Josh, where's my money, right? So I say it's a year, but a lot of times it's less. Sometimes it pushes past a year, you know, how things were with COVID and Springfield and all that. Sometimes the stuff wasn't getting processed very quickly.
what I was gonna ask you was the use of electricity in the building. I
Yep.
know we don't know, but the way the panels are arranged could favor one season over another.
Absolutely.
So,
Yep.
what do you think?
So tilt. So what you get into on tilt is optimal for this location is roughly 25 degrees. Magically, our racking does 20 and 30. So if we're thinking we're going to produce more, so 20 and 30 generally produce very similar yearly outputs. If we go to the 20, which is going to be flatter, we're going to produce more in the summer because we're overhead. Yeah. Versus the winter solstice. Winter solstice, the 30 degrees, you're going to get better snow shed. But the bifacials isn't as big of a deal because you're going to pick up light on the back side, which will heat it up and it melts faster. But in general, we're clipping a lot on this system because we're trying to hit that 25 and maximize the output on that inverter. So The 20 to 30 on the seasonal, I can run some numbers on that, but it's probably not as great as you think it is.
I just,
Would a bad hailstorm affect panels?
They're warranted for like up to an inch. If you get the big old softball size hail we had at my mom and dad's, what was that, 20 years ago, Lisa? They're going through the roofs of the building. You need to carry insurance on
How long
that.
would it take to replace those panels?
So panels are generally available. You know, they're unplug, unbolt them, and put them back up.
Okay.
But inch hail, and that's another thing that comes into consideration if we're at a 30-degree tilt with hail.
You're gonna
Your
slide
physics, right?
Yeah.
It's gonna bounce off versus the flatter we go, it's gonna be more of a direct impact. I mean, we've installed a lot of systems around here. I don't know how much hail you've had in the last 5, 8
Oh, well,
years.
since we've had a bad one.
A bad one, yeah.
Yeah.
But we've not had any breakage from hail yet. The storm that went through up at Chrisman, we just had put that system in, and Jim Ackland's like, I was huddled down and I couldn't even see your solar panels across the grass field because I knew they were going to be gone. They weren't. Everything around it was blown down, but your panels made it, so they're actually pretty durable. Well, I had to go look at a replacement today. Someone hit it with their truck back in the corner of the yard. Mother-in-law hit it, so that one we have to replace. But, and then we try to keep the height of the drip edge up higher so you can get around it to mow. You don't have to mow around them. You can spray. A lot of guys will spray. You can be Marty Jones and put white rock underneath it, which makes it brighter and actually helps with that. With that thought process, though, white rock's very expensive around here. Marty Jones gets a lot of white rock, so he didn't care.
He's got a free truck.
Yeah, he's got a free truck. So generally, you don't do that. When you get grass and vegetation under it, you get evaporative cooling under it, which helps keep it cooler too. So
how many panels is this?
I don't know.
I mean, are we talking an acre, or are we talking a half an acre?
Let me see here. I'd have
That
to.
was a question I had, 'cause,
Yeah.
you know, Bex has got, and I don't know how big their system
There,
is.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm just curious how many acres we're taking up. Well, I don't like to take farmland up.
Yeah.
That's a issue with me.
No, I understand.
Well, your design showed it in the corner of the plot, right?
Yeah, so this is just a snapshot of the field. So I'm showing one row. Each one of these panels is about 2.5 to 3 feet wide. So I could get you an exact dimension, but it looks like it's probably a few hundred feet, one row. So my thought, what we were, battery's going dead, here we go. So the thought was just to come down here. And we can stack it. So we can go, 2 rows, shorten it up if we have to. I can overlay this on here if you're interested in that. What happens is when you start to stack it, you take up more space. Because now we have a row and then we have a gap between the rows and your next row. So your footprint, your ground coverage ratio increases when you start doing multiple rows. But if we come here, and I don't know where the fencing exactly is going to go on this, if there even is going to be fencing around this. We can play with the layout of that. But it's nothing the size of what that castle there.
Well, that's important.
Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned about at the end of the life, recycling.
Yeah.
What would be the cost of something like that?
I mean, in 30 years, that's hard to tell. A lot of places want these products because they have a value to them.
Mhm.
The aluminum frames, what's the aluminum price on this? The aluminum frames on them are worth money. And then, the old leaking toxic material, the old solder joints on that used to have lead in them back in the old days. They don't. I mean, this is an environmental product. They're very conscious about those types of things. The actual cost to recycle, I couldn't tell you what it would be.
And then if you would have to recycle them and put up new panels, then there'd be an additional cost. You're starting over again. That you didn't like it we make this initial investment and then it's good for our 100 years. I mean, it's every 20 years you're going to have to do it again if
30
you
years.
continue.
30 years is your warranty.
Yeah.
I'd say closer to 40.
How long you gonna be around, Carl?
Well, but someone.
That's a
will.
good question.
Someone
No,
will.
that's valuable.
Right.
I would say this though, in 40 years when these panels are at end of life, or let's say 30, because that's what the warranty
Right.
is, that's what I can stand behind.
Mhm.
30 years, what's the value of that electricity at that point that they're producing?
Right.
You know,
Mhm.
the big picture of what is it generating versus, oh, I have to recycle some panels and
Right.
repower it is what we call it, repower it.
By then, you might be buying a suitcase and plugging it into the building.
Right.
I was gonna ask you, you've been doing this a while, have they gotten more efficient in the time?
Yes,
that
they
you-
have.
Like,
Yeah.
like 5%, 10% more efficient?
So I did a research paper on PV and balance of systems back in 2012, so 14 years ago. Solar was probably $10 to $12 a watt back then. It's come down exponentially since then. Modules were probably 100 watts a panel. You know, now we're looking at 500 to 600 watts per panel. Now, that's tricky because the panels have also gotten larger as far as footprint goes. But that panel, if it was a 10%, so 10% of the light hitting it gets converted, was the best panels in the world. Now we're pretty standard over 20. So they've doubled. The other big thing is that bifacial, is being able to produce power off both sides is a big thing. So that's just icing on the cake, say. But yeah, so 2022 is pretty standard. So they've doubled over the last 10 years.
So conceivably, you could go 20 years down the road and that might be worth it to take your old panels out and put new ones in because you can double your output.
Double your output.
Right.
And,
Or at least some.
Yeah.
Some, yeah.
You could
I mean,
replace
I'm sure there
somebody.
comes a point where it's worth it to.
yeah.
In
Okay.
theory, you just replace the panels too, hopefully you'd be able to.
Right.
Your racking and all
Right.
that's the same. Yeah.
You would hope so,
Yeah.
anyways.
You were talking about the tax incentives, selling those, but is the federal government subsidizing in addition to help?
So programs for local nonprofit, those types of things, we could explore what's available. We're working with District 95 on the schools, and we're applying for REAP grant on that. That we're actually going to purchase and own. District 95's buying power off of that, us on that. So being we're a small business, we can qualify for REAP grant funding. The school district can't qualify for that because they're not a small business. So some of that starts to play into the PPAs versus different things. Generally, where I'm going with this though is generally if there is money out there, it's hard to get
Right,
because this is a very hot topic in our
right.
state right
And
now.
you hear people talk, if it wasn't for the federal government subsidizing,
Yeah.
the windmills and the solar panels, it doesn't pay.
Yeah, and that's true.
Right, and I don't know whether Trump's gonna get in or not, but I heard him say the other day, these green energy scams are gonna go away.
Yeah. I wouldn't necessarily call them a scam.
Well,
They're
how-
subsidizing to get it out.
Right.
So I'm a big believer in it. I'm not a fan of wind. I actually hate wind.
Right.
I think solar is,
Where it's at.
yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I'm a civil engineer. I spent the first half of my life building roads and bridges and all that fun stuff. I went back to college. I got a master's degree in energy engineering down at UIC. I had no idea what I wanted to do with it. I just knew I didn't want to be building bridges and airports and tollways anymore. So as I went through this program, you look at energy as a whole. Nuclear power generation, coal power generation, fossil fuel, internal combustion engines, electric vehicles, storage. Renewables is just a class that we take in this overall program. It's the entire energy market. High efficiency buildings, heat pumps, all these things. What I learned when I went through that program is we're going to solar, batteries, EVs, and smart homes. That's where everything's going to go. Because you start looking at these coal plants and all these electric grid systems, it's a 100-year-old monopoly is what it is. And there's better ways to do things. So there's a lot of political football stuff going on behind the scenes, but the reality of it is you start looking at, I can make electricity right here at my property with the sunlight that's here every day for the most part. It really changes things, and ComEds and Amerants are scared to death of it. That's why they promote community solar. They like these big solar plants going in because you still have to use their wires. Their fear is we put solar in a battery and cut the wire. That's their fear. We don't need them anymore. And it will get there, there's no doubt. But we still currently, in the storage world, we use lithium ion. Is the chemistry, where we came from, it's great compared to, the old DeWalt that, ran for 15 minutes and you charge it for 10 hours. So it's a huge step forward, but when you start to look at what we need, lithium only can hold so many molecules of electrons. The chemistry potential is not there. It'll never be good enough. So we need big changes in the chemistries that we use for storage. And I can get on my whole soapbox about storage, but the watch battery for this isn't the same battery I need for a building. It's the same battery I need for a car. All these things start to play into different technologies. But that is definitely coming, energy storage. So the next time I come around, if you do solar, will be Josh telling you about the new storage technologies and how you don't even need to talk to Interstar anymore. Realistically, is what it's going to go to.
Well, make sure you get us the square footage of
Yes,
this
I will.
system.
I'll get you dimensions. And then, as we go through final layouts and plans, we can make adjustments and all that. This is just, kind of a
Right.
explanation of what we're doing. I think the size is kind of maxed out. I don't think you want to go any bigger unless you're like, I do. I want to explore that option. But I think that too, I don't know exactly where's the 911 tower going.
Oh, it's already
It's the,
there.
it's the radio tower.
Radio.
So it's right
Radio
here?
station, it's just.
At the
so-
radio,
so-
big WRS radio station.
Is that going on a separate meter?
Yeah, it's on Ameren.
It's on, well, that's even better. That one you want to move on before the end of the year, because the net metering changes at the end of the year.
If we connected the properties, can we then put this on Ameren? Would that qualify us to go on Ameren?
Territory stuff's they're pretty territorial, I don't know. You've got the whole thing set up now with transformers being bought by Interstar already. I think it's a little late to be switching that now.
All right, well, I just,
Because they just went out and found, a transformer to purchase,
Right.
so.
Tell them to make the same deals they did.
where we're at, we'll have to look at this. It's not gonna be an immediate thing.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to see where we're at with the building and some other issues to make sure that we have funds available if there's an issue with the buildings.
Yeah.
But there's enough built in there that it may be possible.
Okay, fantastic.
Also, we're probably, at that rate, we're probably looking at a bid.
Okay.
So we're gonna have to do specifications.
Okay.
And everybody will be bidding on the same thing.
That's no problem.
But we'll through Josh, keep you posted on
Yep.
where we're at. I don't even know, because we haven't talked about it, half the board may not, or better than half may not even want to do it.
For sure. Yeah,
But-
understand.
Just make sure you get that stuff email that information to Augie so we can all take a look at
You
it.
should
Yeah.
have the proposal once already.
Yeah, we have, but
A
if
few
he's
months ago, but I can
updated
get it
it,
to you again. That's
Yeah,
not-
I've updated some of the things on the proposal, so I'll send you all that updated
well,
numbers.
send it, why don't you send it
Yeah.
to Josh?
Okay.
And that
I'll get
way
it
he
to
can,
Augie.
yeah.
Yeah, we can do that. I will say before I leave though, if you are on Ameren and you have a chance to get that interconnected before the end of the year, net metering 2.0 comes the beginning of this year, so 2025. It starts to look a little more like Interstar's. So what hits their meter, when you pull back, they're not gonna credit you the full delivery rate. So the economics will change. Doesn't mean that it won't work, but there is this magic January 1st date. Just keep that in mind, that the net metering's changing at the end of the year. If you get in, you're in. But
Well, some of us were able to slide in with Ameren, I
Yes.
mean,
Interstar.
Interstar before they shut it down.
Yeah.
Some of us got net.
yeah,
I think they were at 3% or something like that,
Yeah,
and
I
once
think
they
so.
reached 3%, everybody was out of luck.
yeah. And if net metering does come back to Interstar, if it gets pushed by the state, how they calculate those numbers was a big dispute with Ameren. We've put a lot of solar on their system since net metering closed. They may already be at the cap. So it may be a moot point. It might be some of the people that went on early on net billing might move into the net metering. But new customers, it might not even open it for new customers. I don't know what that's gonna look like. I don't think anybody really does.
Well, we appreciate
Thank
you
you.
taking the time, and Josh can make his copy so that we can have it as soon as we can.
Yep,
Okay?
I'll send it today.
All right, thank you.
Have a great day. Thank you.
Appreciate it, Josh.
Just, you know, I just, a little bit of help in case you guys are thinking about it too. There is that 3,000 with Interstar that we'll have to do for a study and stuff that she said recommend doing as soon as possible if any interest because it takes a few months. And then they're supposedly, according to her, are changing their billing, how they're doing it. They're gonna be going from around the clock, I don't know if it's the net metering too, or the terminology, where they charge you at the rate it is. So your day rate, where it's high usage, will be higher, at night will be cheaper, kind of when it's
It's
produced
called
rate.
peak and
They're
peak
switching to
billing.
that, so in theory,
That's
during the
good
most
thing.
expensive part of the day, you'll be on solar. At night, when there's no electricity, you'll be on the cheaper rates because that's where it's cheaper. So we'll help you on your electric bills there too, because it's not a flat rate all day long.
Yeah.
And then they do pay wholesale, I believe, over 30. It's a wholesale, whatever that is. And that would be, you'll pay Interstar your bill, and then Wabash Valley will give you a credit back.
That's if we go over the 25 kW, I believe. So if we keep it under that 25, we're in the sweet spot.
So, and she didn't really go into what happens if you're on Interstar Direct.
And if you have further questions, let me know. I'll come back. I mean, I'm down here quite a bit actually. So I can come back, or if you need to have a meeting with Angie, and we'll go over there and talk to her, whatever you need.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Have a great week. I wanted to revisit something we talked to the building committee on the fasteners at the bottom. I talked to Michael about that more. He's gonna check because they're talking about going with non-galvanized. And I'll give you an example. You know what are they called here? The metal that goes on threshold or lintels. Remember the problems that we had with the old building and over there, and we had to have them replaced over at the government center? Michael says steel is fine and give you a 30-year building. But the minute that non-treated steel is put in, it starts to swell. And what it'll do is the steel will still be there in 50 years. The concrete will start to break apart because of the swelling of the metal. Yeah.
Above that window.
Yep. So he said he would really recommend, they've been all the time, we've been asking for a 50-plus year building. He would just assume us not go with straight steel. Now, yeah, galvanized. He wants us to go with galvanized, not the straight steel. He is looking at, with core, of coating that with concrete after it's put in. Put in the steel, then encapsulate it with concrete. He said their engineers say that may work just as well. But that may be just as expensive as going with the galvanized. But he's gonna talk to, I just wanted to let you know so you could be thinking about that. Because it seemed like everybody was going, oh yeah, let's do that. So we might rethink that, okay? Just saying. So. Taxes are due this Friday, property taxes.
Yep.
We're starting to work on the budget. At any rate, does anybody have anything really, because we've had a pretty full meeting, does anybody have anything they need to discuss?
There's a nice article in the paper Saturday about the
Yes.
Cargill employees donating to the animal shelter $2,000 in cash and I think 2,000 pounds of dog food.
Yeah, it was a nice article.
Really nice. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I wanted to share briefly on the health department last meeting, which was last week. I think I had mentioned there was a retired dentist who had been a one-time employee at the health department. She contacted them to offer her services again. So she's gonna be 1 day a week on Fridays, which was the day that the other dentist, they work a 4-day week. So it's not finalized, but pretty likely that the health department will be able to offer services 5 days a week. And they are very behind, so that's great. And also, they're going to start they've gone to some training for, I believe it was root canals.
Oh, that,
That's big stuff.
But it was, I'm thinking it was root canals, because what's the other one that's kind of like that? But anyway, getting into some more
and then the
detailed
crowns
work.
that
Yeah.
go along with
Or
it.
maybe it was crowns, but yes, but at any rate, they're being able to offer some more detailed services. So rather than putting Band-Aids on people, basically, they'll be able to do some more permanent work. And what we were talking about before on buildings, it's a big relief and greatly appreciated that Scott Ingram kind of takes the lead on
Good.
that. So they're doing floor replacement, poured floors in the dental area, and then the one thing that we were talking about beforehand is there's some bigger work that needs to be done on the outside of the building. And fortunately, I had always encouraged them to make sure they stay in contact with Andy so that we aren't operating as two different groups. And Kim has, so Andy's aware of that, and we were just talking about maybe getting a little advice or information from CORE.
Core or the architect or someone, I'm gonna take some pictures of the areas they're talking about.
Okay, and just stop in and
And
say,
say, hey.
hey to Kim, so she knows you're still on
Yeah,
that.
okay.
All right, thank you. And Kim had, before Kim had ever actually gotten her office arranged, she had a big issue come up. And she right away went to Bellwether and the state's attorney's office. She got what she needed right away from Lauren. Again, I'm a Lauren fan. And then Bellwether responded a little later and backed up what Lauren had said. So Kim's already using her resources well. And I'm really pleased that she ended up being the person that we chose.
Good.
So that's something we can kind of check off our mental list, is health department's running well. And Janet had to step in and take a lead on this HR issue because Kim was not even there yet. So Janet was very helpful on that as well. And so we were very lucky to have somebody that already had a lot of, had the experience and stepped in. So that's all I had on that.
Anybody else?
Does the clock repair people coming this week?
As far as I know, they are. I thought Josh said that they were coming this week.
As soon as they got the seating done, they were gonna be
Some of the
there.
clocks haven't got faces on them, so they're doing something with it.
I haven't been by the last 3 days.
Cut hands,
Finished painting.
so they're,
They looked like they were close on Friday. I can't guarantee you they
They
were
were
done.
supposed to work on Saturday.
Right,
too,
but I
don't know
wasn't
they
down
did
there on
it.
Saturday.
I know I talked to Foyt's this weekend, and they said that not this week, but probably next
they
week.
were,
they'll
they
be
went
on
up the
that
top of it and was stuck with it. And
concrete.
Got a hold of Jason Gore. He said
they
he'll
wouldn't
try
go
to get
there,
up
you
there,
couldn't
but
tell you
I
no
wouldn't.
Yeah.
Cross your fingers, I wouldn't hold my breath.
Yeah.
Stuck in the air.
Oh, that's better.
Anything else?
Thursday at 10
Thursday at 10, yes.
for the value, the
10 and then
material blocks
10:30.
and value engineering.
Right. Okay. Motion to adjourn? Russ,
He's always done more
you
work.
weren't sure you were even gonna be here
I'll
today.
second it.
Well, no, that's Thursday.
Oh, that's Thursday? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. We're adjourned.